Imagine having the absolute audacity to look at Keir Starmer's government, with its endless tax hikes and policy U-turns, and then turning to Nigel Farage and saying, yeah, but you'd be worse. That's exactly what Kemi Badenoch just did, and honestly, the sheer boldness is breathtaking. Welcome back to UK Secrets, where today we're unpacking the moment the Conservative leader decided to wage war on two fronts simultaneously, calling Labour dangerous while telling Farage his premiership would literally blow up the economy. It's political theatre at its absolute finest, and buckle up because Badenoch came out swinging like someone who's got nothing left to lose and everything to prove. So let's dive straight into the chaos. Kemi Badenoch is giving an interview ahead of Conservative Party conference, and she's asked about the state of British politics. Now, most politicians would play it safe, take a few shots of the government, maybe throw in some optimistic soundbites about their own party. Not Badenoch. She goes nuclear on everyone. First, she lays into Starmer, calling Labour dangerous and warning they'll leave an almighty mess after years of tax hikes. Fair enough, that's standard opposition stuff. But then she pivots to Farage, and this is where it gets properly spicy. She says a Nigel Farage premiership will be even worse because he'd blow up the economy by increasing the country's debts with an even bigger welfare state. Even worse than Starmer. Let that sink in. Badenoch is basically saying Labour's a disaster, but reform would be an apocalypse. It's like choosing between food poisoning and plane crash, and she's telling voters, at least with her, they'll just get mild indigestion. Now here's where Badenoch's argument gets interesting, because she's not just throwing insults around. She's making a genuine political case about competence versus vibes. She calls reform a one-man band and says without Farage, everything falls apart. Which, to be fair, is pretty accurate. Reform is Nigel Farage in a party-shaped costume. She contrasts that with the Conservatives being a team, which is a bit rich considering her party's been hemorrhaging MPs to reform like a sinking ship losing lifeboats. Danny Kruger just jumped ship on her watch, becoming the first MP to defect from Tories to reform under her leadership. But Badenoch is playing the long game here. She's saying reform's all flash and no substance, that Farage doesn't do the detail work, and his policies would fiscally implode. She specifically calls out his plan to scrap the two-child benefit cap, saying it would push up the welfare bill and rack up more debt. The irony of a Conservative leader attacking someone for being fiscally irresponsible when her own party left the economy in shambles is not lost on anyone, but get her credit, she's owning it. But wait, let's talk about the Labour side of this equation because Badenoch's critique of Starmer is absolutely savage. She says Labour politicians have never run a business, never hired people, and are just people who spend everybody else's money. It's the classic Conservative attack line, but she delivers it with proper venom. Then she goes for the jugular, calling Starmer weak and pointing out he can't even get his own backbenchers to support teeny-weeny cuts in welfare. Teeny-weeny, that's a phrase she used. It's simultaneously condescending and funny, and it paints Starmer as this ineffectual leader who can't even manage basic party discipline. She says it's not just that he's a socialist, it's that he's weak, which in political terms is basically calling him useless. And then she lumps in Burnham, Rayner, and whoever else might replace Starmer, saying they're all the same. No escape. The whole Labour bench is incompetent in her view. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Badenoch admits the Conservatives lost their way in their final years in government. It's a rare moment of honesty from a politician, and you've got to respect it. She's not pretending the Tories were brilliant right up until the election. She's saying, yeah, we screwed up, but we're back on track now. The problem is, voters aren't exactly rushing to believe that. The Conservatives are trailing 20 points behind reform in some polls. 20 points. Behind a party that didn't even exist a few years ago. That's not losing your way. That's driving off a cliff and blaming the GPS. But Badenoch is trying to rebuild trust by being brutally honest, saying she won't make promises she can't keep, unlike Starmer and Farage, who are apparently both guilty of that. She says a lot of people have lost trust in politics because politicians make promises and then don't deliver. And once that trust disappears, you end up with anarchy. Dramatic, but not entirely wrong. Here's where Badenoch really tries to differentiate herself. Competence. She keeps hammering this point that being tough isn't enough if you're not competent, and just being competent isn't enough if you're not tough. You need both, and she's claiming only the Conservatives have that combination. Reform's tough but incompetent, Labour's neither tough nor competent, and the Tories are the Goldilocks option. It's a smart framing, but it requires voters to have incredibly short memories about the past 14 years of Conservative government that culminated in economic chaos, multiple leadership changes, and a historic election defeat. She's essentially asking people to trust the Conservatives again based on her leadership specifically, which is a massive ask. Let's talk about the ECHR bombshell she's teasing for conference. Badenoch is planning to unveil proposals to take the UK out of the European Convention on Human Rights, which is a massive deal. This has been a dream policy for the Conservative right for years, and she's finally pulling the trigger. She's clear it's not a silver bullet for stopping small boats, but part of a whole package including third country deterrence, which is code for bringing back Rwanda-style deportation schemes. When asked directly if she'd revive Rwanda, she says it was already working as a deterrent before it even started because people were deciding not to come, which is an interesting interpretation of events considering the policy never actually got off the ground and the boats kept coming. But she's sticking to her guns, saying deterrence works even if it's never implemented, which is either genius or complete nonsense depending on your perspective. And then there's her takedown of Starmer calling immigration policy racist. Badenoch, who's intimately familiar with racism as a black woman in British politics, says Starmer's been calling immigration policy racist since he was at school or university, and she's sick of it. She makes a genuinely important point. When you call everything racist, the word loses meaning and real racists hide in plain sight. It's a critique that resonates beyond party politics. She ends with, "This is not a racist country," which is both a statement of fact and a political positioning. She's trying to reclaim patriotism and immigration enforcement from accusations of racism, saying you can have tough borders without being bigoted. Whether voters by that distinction is the trillion-pound question. Thanks for watching UK Secrets. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe and drop a comment. Who do you trust more, Starmer, Farage, or Badenoch? See you next time.